Hello, welcome to Victory Chat with Jackie Mckeever. I am your host, Jackie Mckeever, and on Victory Chat, we talk about books, business, faith, and finances. Why? Because your victory starts with conversation. Your victory starts right here. You all, welcome to my podcast. Remember that a video version of this interview can be found on my YouTube channel. You can find my YouTube channel by going to www.jackiemckeever.com/links. Okay. And while you're there, make sure that you subscribe, click the notification bell, and say hello. Hey, Jackie. Hey, Latarsha. How you doing? Anyway, so speaking of Latarsha, we have a special guest for season 2 of Behind the Author's Pen. We have Latarsha Haughton. She is the author of Breaking the Silence. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming. Well, she has agreed to get in our hot seat and let us get all up in her business, go behind her pen, okay, to see what inspired her to write such an awesome book. Hear a little bit more about her story, get all up in her business, so to speak. You ready for the hot seat?
Yes, ma'am. Come
All
on,
right.
bring it on.
We'll be gentle, I promise. So my first question is, why did you decide to write this book?
Well, I was going through a divorce at the time, and going through my divorce, I had a lot of time to spend with God. And I would get up every morning and sit near this window and just look out the window and pray and read my Bible before I left out to go to work. And I heard a voice say, "You need to tell your story." I'm looking and I'm like, "Tell my story? I would never tell anybody my story." I said, "I feel ashamed. I feel guilty. I feel like I would be betraying my family, and I can't do this." So I heard the voice again say, "You need to tell your story." And it wasn't until I left, went to work, and tried to brush it off, and I was driving, and something said, "Somebody needs to hear your story." And that kept playing in my conscience for a while. And I felt like for so many years, I had suppressed my sexual trauma and I never told anybody. And as I was thinking about it, I just started crying. And I realized that I had brought all of that baggage into this marriage, and my ex had so much baggage that he brought in that we were just cutting each other. So I said, well, maybe because I was in therapy at this time, working through all of this stuff that I never knew was there because I had suppressed it for so many years. And that is what triggered me to say, maybe I could break my silence to open up somebody else's prison.
That's deep.
And that was the beginning of me thinking about writing a book.
Wow. So how long did it take you to write it?
The first time I started trying to write a book, a friend of mine, he was like, you need to write your story, because this is when I had went public with my story, breaking my silence. And I told him, I said, I really need like help with like writing an outline, and then, what do I want to talk about? Who is my audience? Is what I had to think about. Like, who do I want to write this to? Because when I write, I want to not empower, but to impact.
Mm.
And so him and I started writing a book, and I didn't like the direction that the book was going in. So I said, you know what? He said, well, we're done. We're done the book. And I said, no, this is not it. Because I did not feel like I was, I felt like through the book, I was just telling the story. But like I said, I don't want to just tell the story. I want to impact lives from the story. So I had to rewrite the book all over again. So I want to say I started writing it 2016. I stopped after we finished that one. And then I started back up during COVID in 2020. And I published my book November the 1st of 2021.
Wow, that's awesome. Um, were there any other delays in producing this book?
Yes. I was supposed to publish the book in September. I mean, no, I think we were going to do it October. And I lost my mother this year to COVID.
I'm sorry.
And September the 28th, 2021, I lost my mother. So I put my, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Continue.
Okay. So I put my mother on the, so I told them, put the book on pause. I got to write a dedication page to my mother. And I wrote this dedication page to her, and I had to change a few things that I had wrote in the book. That was my dilemma. And another thing was my dilemma is fear. Because I was putting so much out into the world, I began to fear. And then I had to work through that fear of the unknown, of how my family was going to respond to my book. And so I wanted to make sure it was tactful, but I wanted to make sure I was walking in my truth. So those was the dilemmas, is the fear of the aftermath of my family seeing, reading, and seeing things that were going on. And then, me wanting to fix some things and dedicate a page to my mother. So that was a couple of the delays.
My next question was, who is this book written for?
This book is written for the world. When I say the world, when you read this book, regardless if you had experienced sexual trauma or anything, it's going to be something in this book that you would be able to relate to. I made sure that this book was relative to people in general, people that are hurting, people that have experienced some type of trauma. It doesn't necessarily have to be sexual trauma, but we have all experienced some type of trauma in our lives. And so I wrote it for people that have experienced some type of trauma.
Have you ever written a book before or after writing this book?
So I co-authored in a daily devotional book. I co-authored in that book. It's called One Day at a Time. And the day is spelled DAE, one day at a time. And I wrote, different articles, different pieces for magazines.
That's awesome. I'm sorry for your loss of your mom.
Thank you.
Will
This
there
is
be
devastating.
it really is. Will there be any other books in this genre or other genres for you?
Yes. I want to write, the next book will be called Healing the Pain. So I broke the silence, but now I want to talk about how you heal through that pain, and talking about that onion and how you have to peel back layers and layers of healing. Because dealing with trauma, there's so many layers to it that need to be healed. And that's what I want to focus on next. I'm sorry, I also wrote a workbook, 12 Steps to Self-Love Coaching Program. I
Mm-hmm.
wrote a workbook, but it also have an online course to it
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to teach people, okay, now that you have experienced some type of trauma, now you have to learn how to love yourself. And you have to be able to love yourself first. We're so easy to want to love and help everybody else, but we never learn how to love ourselves.
Yeah, that's a really good topic. I was on the podcast the other day and I was saying that's one of the things that um although I don't know if it should be part of the mandatory curriculum, that would be an awesome subject because so many people are suffering, they're suffering in silence, you know, feeling ashamed, feeling like nobody cares, feeling like nobody will understand them, but to know that there are tools out there that can help you begin again.
Yes, there is. And I think that if people would learn how to set boundaries, people will learn how to respect you. And
Now that right there, that's a
that's
lesson right there by itself. Setting boundaries and temperament, you know, because sometimes we think that, oh, we got to growl at people, you know, in order to set that boundary. But
yes,
you just have to be confident in who you are and what you're saying and learn how to be firm with your voice. It doesn't
right.
necessarily have to be loud. It doesn't have to be offensive, but you have to be able to speak with the authority, with the confidence, with the dominance that God had gave you. You know, we have
Right.
anyway, girl, don't get me started, honey.
And look,
Um,
we can talk all day long because that's what I teach in my workbook. It's 3 modules. It's mind, body, and soul. And so when you learn how to change the mindset, when you learn how to love yourself, all your flaws and all, and then you have to do that soul cleansing. And so that's what I take them through. So I mean, everything you said, I'm in total agreement with you.
so what do you want readers to really get out of this particular book, Breaking the Silence?
I want people to understand that when you do not break generational curses, they continue to go on to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. It is important to be a voice and break the silence. Stop keeping stuff a secret. Stop sweeping stuff under the rug. Because when you do that, you are affecting that next generation that got to come behind you. And they got to heal. Because if you don't heal, how are you going to teach that next generation to heal so we can break this up? Because it's constantly happening. If you look at your family, you look at alcoholism, you look at the drug abuse, it goes on from generation to generation to generation, and it does not stop. But here, it stops with me, with the sexual abuse.
Amen to that. Um, my next question is, what other books or authors inspire you?
Some of the books that inspire me is, I forgot the author's name, but it's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm.
Have you ever heard of that?
Sound like a good book.
Okay. The Body Keep the Score is by Benzo van der Kolk,
Okay.
and it's called The Body Keeps the Score. It teaches you how your body holds on to the trauma and where it comes out in different areas of that trauma. He gives you a complete breakdown. I love an author, John Henry and Towson. And I'm sorry. Changes were more apparent. I'm sorry. It's called Safe People: How to Find Relationships That Are Good for You and Avoid Those That Aren't. And the same author that read that wrote the book called Boundaries.
Awesome.
Those two books, I feel like, changed my life.
What advice would you give authors writing their first book?
The advice I would give authors writing their first book is really examine your heart to know exactly what you want your audience to know. Like, what are you trying to teach them, inspire them? I would make sure that I find out who my audience is, of who I want to hear this, and what am I really trying to convey to them, because it's so important that you want to inspire people. You know, you want people to be able to look at your book and walk away and say, wow, this book has changed my life.
That's amazing. It's an old saying that you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. That's what that reminded me of.
Yes. So that's what I would want to encourage another author.
Thank you for that. Our last question is, can you give the audience a little sample or blurb from your book, and then also let them know where they can purchase your book at?
Okay. Is it okay if I read them before I read that part, just so that they can understand why I'm reading what I'm reading on forgiveness, but just give them a brief example of what my book is? My book is called Breaking the Silence by Latarsha Haughton. It can be purchased on Amazon, Books A Million, and Barnes and Noble, and also on my website. But it says Breaking the Silence is a story of Latarsha Haughton, founder of Breaking the Silence, Healing the Pain. Latarsha gets candid about the years of abuse she suffered at the hands of family members, most specifically her biological father. She tells how she transformed the pain of years of sexual trauma and being impregnated by one of her abusers, to discovering her purpose of creating a community where survivors of abuse could come together to learn self-love and forgiveness. Go with Latarsha as she take you through her dark days as a child to how she is now flourishing in life and in business. Since she discovered her voice and broke her silence, she haven't stopped sharing her story with the hope of freeing others to share theirs. There's so much pain in my truth. And what I'm going to read you is, I have a chapter, and my chapter is on forgiveness. I wrote my father a letter because I needed to release him in order for me to reclaim my power. And for years, I was in a dark place because I did not know how to release him and forgive him and to free him. So with me relinquishing my power to him, I was sad and darkness, always wanting to die. Always had a couple of suicide attempts because I hated my life. But I always wanted to encourage other people around me because I didn't want them to understand and know the pain that I was suffering inside. So I wore this mask, and that mask had a beautiful smile because I always continued to smile. But on the inside, I was crying, and I was in so much agony. And so as I read this letter to my father, I was releasing him, I was forgiving him, and I was reclaiming and taking back my power. So as you read along with me and reading this letter, I want you to just feel the emotions with me as I'm releasing this. I said, Dear Daddy, I'm sitting here with thoughts racing through my mind. I have so many mixed emotions as I write this letter. As a child, I looked up to you and I thought so highly of you. I was truly a daddy's little girl. My universe would light up every time I saw you. I would immediately run towards you and jump straight into your arms. I knew without a doubt in my mind, you would catch me. You were the most important person on this planet to me. I was living with mommy in Detroit. I remember when you came to pick me up to live with you and Barbara in Baltimore. I thought you would take great care of me. I was so happy because I finally had a family I always dreamed of. Barbara became like a godmother to me, and her children became two sisters and a brother. By the way, I still visit her to this day, and she is still active in my life. We had a house with a pool and a backyard. I remember you teaching me how to ride my bicycle. I would sit on the porch and you would watch me ride that big wheel up and down the street for hours. I remember many days after work, you would take me to High's convenience store to get chocolate ice cream, root beer soda, and we would make root beer floats. Another one of my favorites was going to McDonald's for cheeseburgers and fries and a chocolate milkshake. You used to make me laugh all the time. I remember us going to IHOP. You left $5 on the table. I took the $5 off the table, running behind you, saying, Daddy, you left your $5. And you said, Baby, put that back. I'm tipping the lady for serving us our food. We laughed so hard. I remember you telling what I had done to other people. You thought it was funny. Another funny moment was when we would ride past the graveyard, you would ask me how many people over there were dead. I started counting and you started laughing and said, Everyone over there is dead, silly girl. I remember us having many great times together. I noticed a tremendous change when you took me from Barbara's house and I started living with Grandma's house. My entire world turned upside down. You started coming to visit me less and less. I started feeling insecure. I felt like I wasn't important and I didn't have parents that loved and cared about me. I felt lonely and sad a lot. I couldn't understand my feelings at the time, but I knew I wasn't happy at living at Grandma's house. As I got older, you began to view me differently. The way you treated and responded to me made me feel like I irritated you. I felt like I couldn't make you proud of me and nothing I did was good enough. I felt as if everyone else was more important than me. You became absent. You missed everything that was important to me. I allowed myself to become numb and I started filling my emptiness with unhealthy people and things. As a teenager, you began to interact and talk to me as if I was an adult. At the time, I couldn't understand why you would make me watch pornography with you. I hated it and how uncomfortable it made me feel. I tried to express my feelings, but you would call me simple and would tell me to shut up. You stated that you were trying to teach me how to become a woman. The abuse and the manipulation ran so deep. I remember you expressed the importance of me modeling in fashion shows. It was one of the many ways you provided me false hope and controlled me. You even made me snort cocaine and told me it would help me to become a woman and view life differently. I remember when you began taking my clothes out of the bathroom while I was showering so you could watch me walk from the bathroom to my room with only a towel wrapped around me. I was fed up with your shit. So I tried speaking up for myself. You responded by saying, You being disrespectful. Then you slapped me so hard in my face that I could feel a handprint as I rubbed my cheek and I cried. That day was traumatizing to me. From that point on, I suffered in silence. I was afraid and never able to express myself to you. I kept all my feelings and thoughts in my head to myself. The first time you touched me inappropriately, I wanted to commit suicide. I thought I could never live to see another day. I hated myself. I couldn't wash myself enough to get the shame off. I felt like everyone in the world could see this dirty secret. It was disgusting and disgraceful. I didn't feel like a teenager anymore. My innocence and purity was stripping from me. You even had the audacity to try to force me to sleep with you and another woman. I was afraid of you, but I couldn't wait until I became an adult so I could just rip her to pieces for treating me like that. Years later, I saw her at a family funeral. She looked at me and turned her head quickly. I wanted to slap her. I know she could see the rage in my eyes, but I kept my composure. It was all possible because I received God in my life, and He enabled me to overlook her offenses. I remember my mother calling you from the ER because I had taken some drugs with my uncle. It was a cry for help and an attempt to numb all my pain. The doctor said I had a slight heart attack from the mixture of various drugs he had given me. I remember on the ride home from the hospital when you stated, since you want to get high, you're going to snort some more cocaine. I just had gotten discharged from the hospital, and later that night, you made me snort more cocaine. You said, I bet you won't do it again with anyone else. That was the night I conceived my son. I was a senior in high school. You took complete advantage of me, and in, and it has scared me, the life out of me. I suppressed that night so much that for many years, I didn't remember the details. Many years of intense therapy helped me bring back those deep buried memories. It took many years for me to build up the courage to confront you. At the age of 27, I approached you about my son, Tracy. I was tired and no longer wanting to hold on to family secrets. I was ready to be free from all the darkness that lingered over me for so long. I was tired of being depressed and contemplating suicide year after year because of the shame and the guilt I had to live with. Unfortunately, I made several attempts, but the grace of God, I was never successful because He had another plan for my life. I was full of courage, but incredibly nervous at the same time. I approached your front door and I was visibly shaken as I walked in your house. My voice began to crack as I was speaking. I'm sure you remember when I told you Tracy was your son. Again, you called me crazy and simple. You went on to say, no one would ever believe your crazy ass. I remember you saying you knew you were crazy and just like your simple mother. I think he recognized the seriousness on my face. And you asked me, do you know what you would do to this family? You said this information would destroy us and hurt so many. I was hurt. I guess I was looking for an apology, but the only thing you could come up with were self-serving, narcissistic remarks. I thought I was strong enough to handle all the insults, but I wasn't. Again, I was left feeling crushed in spirit and devastated. I swore to myself I wouldn't ever talk about the situation again. I never told anyone about our conversation because it was just too hurtful. I swept it back under the rug and left it there for many years. I thought I had everything under control, but I really didn't. I now realize how you and your abuse negatively affected most of my relationships. But at the time, I just wanted all of it to be buried and forgotten. But God wouldn't allow this to happen. In 2015, God literally spoke to me and said, you need to tell your story. I started fasting and praying more than I ever have in my life. It was a time to work on healing. I believed a good place to start was my childhood. I needed to better understand why I made so many wrong choices. God was working on my forgiveness towards you. It was time when I developed empathy for you. I suspected you were abused yourself and was repeating those horrible learned behaviors. I started praying for your salvation and your freedom. Finally, it registered within me. For me to take back my power, I had to release you. Simple things in life weren't so simple. For years, I was afraid to even wear pajamas to bed. As a form of protection from you, I slept in my clothes. The abuse I endured was traumatic and has taken a toll on my life. But again, through faith, anything is possible. Change is the one constant life. I believe that breaking my silence gave me much freedom and courage to stand up for myself. I can now sleep in pajamas peacefully. When I speak, I am heard. I am a woman walking in my truth and no longer living a life of a victim. I am no longer compelled to people please, and I can say no because I don't need acceptance. This is what I call taking back my power and living a life of purpose. Today, I declare that I am a free woman, and I forgive you with all of my heart for all of the sins you committed against me. I vow to use our story, our life story, to help save many. Thank you for bringing me into this world because now I see God's good and perfect will for my life. Love, your daughter, Latarsha.
Wow, that was a lot. That was a lot. Oh my goodness, y'all. All I can say is y'all need to get the book, read it, support my fellow woman author. Um that was amazing. That was amazing. Well, thank you so much for appearing on my show. Thank you for sharing the letting us go behind your author's pen. Thank you for allowing us to have a glimpse into inside your world during that time of writing the book. Um, Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for sharing that letter, that deep, heartfelt. I felt it. Okay, this is the first time I've listened to it, so I felt it. I know my audience felt it. Y'all, if you need more, or if you know somebody that can use this book, purchase this book. She mentioned several areas like Books a Million, Amazon, and so forth, that you can purchase this book. Thank you so much, Latasha. And thank you, listeners. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and subscribe this interview, and like I said, support our authors, and most importantly, remember, your victory starts here. Thank you again.
Thank you.